Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Burgundy back with another reaction video. Today we're going to check out a video that is the entire history, or claims to be the entire history, of video game consoles presented in 11 minutes. I'm not sure if they're going to squeeze all of them in 11 minutes, but we're going to find out. I am on the older side. I've been gaming since the early 80s, so I probably will have had a lot of these. So we're just going to sort of go through this. I haven't watched this video yet, and we're going to sort of check out the consoles that are on there. I'll see like what brings up memories for me, what's a little bit before my time, consoles I skipped, anything that comes up. So let's go ahead and get into the entire history of home video game consoles in 11 minutes.
Since the first home console was released all the way back in the groovy days of 1972, there have been over 30 consoles created and sold in North America. That is an astonishingly high number. At this time, Nintendo was still years away from making their first console in Japan. Sony was still 20 years away from the launch of the original PlayStation, and Microsoft was 30 years away from the launch of the original Xbox. As you can see, times were much different back then. Remember Sega? Yeah, gaming has come a long way through the years. So I'm going to run through every single console generation by generation.
I spent a lot of time playing Thunder Force 2. I don't know if that game was actually good or not, but I thought it was awesome. And
North American gamers only really had one option at the time, the Magnavox Odyssey, which was released in 1972. The Odyssey had a really cool name and used a type of removable printed circuit board card, similar to a typical game cartridge, to play games. The console has that 1970s aesthetic and just fit right in back then. The games weren't too complicated on the Odyssey either. They consisted of 3 square dots and a line. You even had to put a plastic overlay on your screen sometimes to add additional visual elements to the games. Yeah, it was the first console ever, so I'm going to cut it some slack. Magnavox would go on to make more improved versions of the Odyssey until 1977 and etch their name into video game history forever. The second generation of video game consoles began in 1976 with the Fairchild Channel F. The F supposedly stood for fun, but I think it actually stood for flop. It wasn't the best console for hardcore gamers, but their education games for children were solid. 1977 saw the release of the famous Atari 2600, the console that is widely regarded as the king of the second generation. Its revolutionary joystick controller changed the game forever. Until 1977, you only saw joysticks in the arcade, but the Atari 2600 put one in your home. Along with Pac-Man, Space Invaders may be the most well-known game on the console and helped drive sales up. In 1978, we got the Bally Astro Cake, which flopped. A year later, in 1979, we got the Magnavox Odyssey 2, an all-new console building upon the first one ever created, and it was actually pretty good. Lastly, in 1980, we got the Intellivision. It was Mattel's first video game console ever and actually gave the Atari 2600 a run for its money.
La marca Prosecco.
So while we're having the commercial break here, I'm just going to sort of switch over. I'm not trying to give anybody any free advertising. So far, some decent memories coming up of these systems. For those of you who've never really seen gaming from when it was sort of back at this level, there's a lot of blocks that you have to look forward to before things start looking like the games that you know.
Since the first home console was released all the way back in the...
We're gonna cut this part. No one's gonna see that I screwed it up.
The third generation of video game consoles, also known as the 8-bit era, kicked off in 1985 with, you guessed it, the Nintendo Entertainment System. It was Nintendo's first foray into the North American video game market after the crash of 1983. And oh boy, was it a smashing success. Their IPs like Super Mario and The Legend of Zelda were instant hits, and the games were unlike anything ever seen at the time. The controllers were simple, but way better than those from the second generation. The NES truly changed the game. Just a year later, in 1986, the Sega Master System and the Atari 7800 both hit store shelves to compete with the NES, but they came up short. The Master System had a much smaller library than the NES, and its games simply weren't as good. The Atari 7800 was a big improvement over the 2600, but still had its fair share of problems, especially in terms of audio. The fourth generation of video game consoles, better known as the 16-bit era, began in 1989 with the release of the TurboGrafx 16. and the Sega Genesis.
I never knew anyone who had
The
a TurboGrafx.
TurboGrafx
Well, I knew one
16
kid,
was
but
technically
he
not a
was
16-bit
an absolute
console,
psychopath.
as it used a modified 8-bit CPU, which led to poor
So I never
sales.
have played
The
the
Sega
TurboGrafx
Genesis
16.
holds a special place in my heart as it was the
Sega
first
Genesis
home
I had
console I ever played.
some
For
of my favorite
starters,
games of
it
all
was
time on
actually a
that system.
16-bit system, and all the Sonic the Hedgehog games absolutely
Sonic the
slapped.
Hedgehog.
It was such a good console with a great library of games, but still couldn't
Sega
compete
talked
with
a
the
lot
Super
about how they had
Nintendo
these new
Entertainment
processors
System.
that was fast
Released in
enough to run a game like
1991,
Sonic
the
the
SNES
Hedgehog
was the
and
king
how
of the
the
fourth
Super
generation.
Nintendo wouldn't have been
I don't
able
even know
to
where to
play
start with the SNES.
that
The
game 'cause it
NES was
couldn't
so
run fast
successful
enough.
that Nintendo
There's a lot of
just
very
knew the
strange
SNES would
ways that
dominate
consoles
sales. Its
differentiated
graphics were
themselves
great.
back in the day.
It had some incredible games, and those controllers were
Metroid is an
top-notch.
all-timer.
In fact, the SNES was so good, it was still popular well into the 5th generation. Oh, we also got the Neo Geo in 1991. It brought a unique arcade experience to your home, but it was so expensive that it was seen as a luxury console more than anything
the Neo
else.
Geo was crazy expensive.
This is
and
what you can
those
buy for $10
cartridges
at
were
KFC.
also, absurdly big, because I think they were pretty much just like the cartridges that you would put in, like they would have, like, you could go to arcades and there would be a Neo Geo, and you'd be able to usually there'd be like 3 or 4 games that you could pick from on that. So the home version, I think they were really selling like the same cartridges that they had in the arcade machines. So you did get a better experience, but again, those cartridges were crazy
There were
expensive.
plenty of consoles released in the 5th generation, but only 2 of them had success in North America. 1993 saw the release of the 3DO and the Atari Jaguar. The 3DO had a highly promoted launch, but ended up a victim of market saturation. It was difficult to develop games for the Atari Jaguar, which led to poor sales due to a lack of third-party support. 1995 saw the release of the Sega Saturn, which failed to live up to the expectations set by the previous generation's Genesis. That's partly because
Yeah,
it
it's funny,
launched
the
in May,
Genesis is really
a
the
very odd
only
time of the year,
successful
and because the
console
console
that Sega
didn't
had, and they
release a
obviously
single
still
Sonic the Hedgehog
are
title.
a very
After a
successful
dispute
company
over a
as a software
disc-based
company,
add-on
but,
for the SNES,
the
Nintendo
Master
and
System
Sony
didn't do
both
anything
parted
compared to
ways
the
and
NES.
decided to do things on their own. Sony
the
would go on
Genesis
to
ended
release
up
the
getting
PlayStation in
beat by the Super
1995,
Nintendo
and
eventually,
Nintendo
but had a
released
really
the
strong start,
N64
but
a
yeah,
year later in 1996. This was
Sega
the
always
most
had a lot of
intense
really cool
console
ideas
war
and
we
could
had
never make
ever
a,
seen at the time.
system stick
Discs
after
versus
that.
cartridges. Traditional
I also took
controllers
some of those
versus funky
generations off.
controllers.
This is really sort of
Fights
where
over
the PlayStation's
third-party
really where I
developers.
started getting
It
back
had it
into
all.
gaming
The
as a
PlayStation
young
was the new
adult.
kid on the block and actually took it to
I was a
Nintendo.
freshman
Due to
in
their
college when
usage
the
of
when
discs,
the,
they were able to
PlayStation came
steal
out,
some of their
and
third-party
a
developers
sophomore
from
when the
Nintendo,
N64
none more
came
famous
out.
than Square Enix.
And again,
The
this is when
PS1
it
was
really
the
started
first
to
console
feel
ever to
like
sell
there were
over
interesting
100 million
video
units
game
and was a
experiences that you
smashing
could have on
success.
console.
The N64 was also a very good console. Super Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, the N64 was loaded with great games, but at the end of the day, it couldn't compete with the PS1. The 6th generation
Sure
saw
couldn't, and we
4
had the
consoles
PS2, which
duke
I
it out for
believe is still the
supremacy,
best-selling
starting with
console of all time. It's
1999's
absolutely
Sega
absurd how
Dreamcast,
many
a console
PS2s got
truly
sold.
ahead of its time. The graphics on the console were insane for the time period, considering it came out near the end of the
remember
64-bit
renting a
era,
Dreamcast
and it
from
had online
Blockbuster
capabilities.
Video in
If
Boston,
Sega
the
released
week
it
they came out,
literally
you used to
just a
have to,
few
like,
years
I had to
later,
put, like,
maybe
$500
things would have
on my
been
credit
different,
card as a
but it was
deposit,
the
and
last
then they
console
refunded
they
it when you
ever
brought
made.
it back, but, like,
2000 saw the
legit,
release
you
of the
could
Sony
rent whole
PlayStation
consoles
2, which
from
is still the
video stores,
best-selling
but you
console of
basically had to
all
pay for the
time
console,
today.
and then they gave you
For
your money back
starters,
when you
the
returned
console
it,
was
so
backwards compatible with the
not a great way to
PS1,
spend
so
your
there was
money,
no
but
reason
it was
to
a
not
fun weekend.
upgrade if you had the cash. It also doubled as a DVD player back when those were all the rage. Graphics were great, the controllers were great, and the console had online capabilities. It was everything any gamer wanted at the time. In 2001, 2 consoles were released, the Nintendo GameCube and the Microsoft Xbox.
also-
The GameCube was the
gonna
first
say right
Nintendo
now,
home console to
the-
use discs,
the
but
Wavebird,
they
the
used
wireless
mini discs
controller for
and
the
not
GameCube
typical
is
CD-ROMs.
still like a
The
goated,
GameCube
like,
had
absolute
arguably
top
the
five
best controller of
that
all
one right
time
there, top
and
five
tons of
controller
great
all time.
games, but it failed to compete with the PS2. Microsoft decided to get into the video game scene with the Xbox, and it was very successful in North America, having a record-breaking launch and outselling the GameCube. Halo Combat
Yeah, I
Evolved was
skipped the
such a
first,
great game that players
generation
were
of the
buying an
Xbox. I didn't
Xbox
get into the
just to
Xbox till
play
the
it.
360 era.
Microsoft
It's
truly
funny
made
'cause
online gaming go
Xbox is
mainstream.
definitely my console of choice at this point.
The 7th generation of video games started in 2005 with the Microsoft Xbox 360. It was released a whole year before the PlayStation 3 and Wii,
definitely
giving
bought my
Microsoft
Xbox
a head
360
start
with
on the
part of my
competition. The
financial
console
aid check for
featured
grad school,
Xbox Live, a
which
revolutionary
is
online
why you
service
should not
that helped
lend
you
tens
keep
of
track of
thousands
your
of dollars
friends
to
and made
students.
playing online a breeze. While many believe the Xbox 360 was the king of the 7th generation, it was let down by technical issues, like the Red Ring of Death, time and time again. In 2006, Sony released the PlayStation 3 and Nintendo released the Wii. The PS3 was a direct competitor to the Xbox 360. The consoles both had an online service, and the main difference being the PlayStation Network was free while Xbox Live was a paid service. The PS3 also doubled as a Blu-ray player, which made it more attractive than the Xbox 360 at the time. While the Xbox 360 and PS3 were all about power and graphics, the Wii was all about innovation. The Wii didn't have gorgeous graphics or high-end specs. It was all about motion controls and having fun. They didn't get involved in any console wars, and it worked out well for them. The Wii outsold both of its competitors and is still being played to this day.
With like the tech side and just like the graphics race of things.
The 8th generation of video game consoles kicked off in 2012 with the Wii U, which may have been Nintendo's biggest flop since the Virtual Boy.
Pretty close to the current era.
This console just didn't have it. It had a horrible advertising campaign, which led to poor sales right off the bat, and its gamepad was supposed to be revolutionary, but turned out to just be very limited. Its user interface and functionality weren't great, and as usual,
so obviously we're pretty close to the modern consoles at this point. It is definitely very funny to sort of look back and see the evolution of games through these last, I guess, almost 50 years, or yeah, I guess it has, 72 is the beginning, over 50 years at this point. A lot of very interesting innovations through the years.
In regards to its online service. 2013 saw the release of 2 consoles, the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. Oh man, did Microsoft shoot themselves in the foot when launching the Xbox One. The console cost $100 more than the PS4 at launch because it came with Kinect, which, oh yeah, was always on, watching your every move. It didn't go over well with the public, so many gamers switched to the PS4. Both consoles were great, but it's clear that the PS4 was the class of the generation, until the Nintendo Switch came out in 2017. It took Nintendo 5 years to learn from their mistakes, but they took everything that was innovative about the Wii U and perfected it in the Switch. It was the first hybrid console, capable of being played in handheld mode or in docked mode. It's revolutionary and one of the best consoles available right now. Lastly, we have the current generation of video game consoles, the 9th generation. In the span of 3 days, we saw 2 new consoles get released in 2020, with the Xbox Series X and S and the PlayStation 5. As you know, the Xbox Series X is the most powerful console in the world, capable of playing games in 8K at 120 frames per second. It has one of the most modern controllers out there with a gorgeous hybrid D-pad, and is just chock full of next-gen features. Its little brother, the Xbox Series S, isn't nearly as powerful as the Series X, but it's still capable of playing games in 1440p at 100.
Alright, so that was my live reaction to 49 years of video game consoles in 10 minutes. I want to thank everybody for checking out the channel. Go ahead, like, subscribe. If you want to talk to me down in the comments about your favorite consoles, when you got into home consoles, if you think I have really stupid opinions, it's always fun to call someone a dumb jerk on the internet. So I welcome those interactions as well. This is Burgundy. I'm out. I'll see you all next time.